Welcome back everybody, my name is Philip and today we will be talking about shutter speed and the shutter priority mode on your camera. If you just got a new camera for Christmas, or if you have an older camera which you have mostly used in auto mode so far, then this video is exactly right for you. It's going to introduce you into one of the big three of exposure, or I think it's actually the big three of taking pictures in general, but using the full potential your camera has to offer. So, this video is actually part of a very elaborate and detailed article that I have composed over at the website, which is of course linked down there in the description. And there I'm talking about the big three, which is ISO, aperture, shutter speed, and on the side I'm also talking about the manual mode your camera has to offer, just that you can get into the feeling of controlling every single setting that your camera has to get the most out of the pictures that you will be taking. So if you're interested in getting the full tour what your camera can do for you with these big 3 or 4 settings, then don't worry to head over, or don't hesitate to head over to the article and give it a read. After this, you'll be good to go. Now for today we will talk about the shutter speed or the shutter priority mode on your camera. And what does that mean, what is that, and why should I use it, why would I care about these kind of things? Now before we talk about what is the shutter speed, first let's try to understand what is the shutter. And if I remove a lens from a camera, such as this one for example right here, and if you look into it while the lens is being removed, don't necessarily do it with your camera because you might get dirt into the sensor, which kind of sucks. But in my case, it's an old camera, so I don't really care. So if you look into it, especially if it's a DSLR camera, you will most likely see a mirror. And this mirror, you can be moved out of the way. And if you do move it out of the way, then you will see what is called the camera sensor. And the camera sensor, in easier terms, simply collects the light and is responsible for taking the picture in the first place. So the sensor takes the light in, transforms it, quote to quote, into an image and then saves that image onto your camera. And this sensor is obviously, let's say, the main part of the camera, also sometimes or mostly the most expensive one, but yeah, it just takes the picture. Now, what is the shutter in relation to the sensor? Imagine that the shutter to be a wall or a curtain that sits tight on your camera sensor until you take a picture. All right. So when you look through the viewfinder and you're composing your shots or you're changing settings, all these kind of things, there will be the shutter that sits tight and closed in front of that sensor and just waits for you to hit the shutter release or the fire button if you want to take the picture finally. Once you do take the picture, the shutter will essentially move out of the way and the sensor can be exposed to light, the picture is being taken, and then once the picture has been taken, the shutter will move tightly back into the position it had before, essentially the closed position where no light can reach the sensor until you hit the button again to take a picture. So in essence, the shutter is nothing else than a wall or a curtain that sits in front of your sensor and blocks out the light until you do take the picture. So while this might make sense, so what is shutter speed then? I mean, if it's just like there or not there, what is shutter speed? How is it measured? And how does it help you with taking pictures? Now for that, let's have a look at shutter speed first. Remember how I said that this shutter essentially sits in front of the sensor and can go away and can go back in. Now the shutter speed determines how long do you take the picture for, or in other words, how long is the shutter be gone from the sensor, how long is the sensor being exposed to light. So if you have a very fast shutter speed, essentially that means that the shutter moves away just for a very short time and then goes back. Right? If you have a very low shutter speed or slow shutter speed, I guess speed is slow. If you have a slow shutter speed, then the shutter moves out of the way to let light reach the sensor for a longer time. And this can be 1 second, 5 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or minutes if you want to, if you have the right equipment. Right? So the shutter speed essentially only determines how long the picture is being taken for by making use of the shutter that can go out of the way to let light pass through or go back to block it out again. Now that might sound super cool, but why would you use that? Now there are many situations where you want to have, for example, a very slow shutter speed, such as if you are in the night, in the middle of the night, it's pitch black outside, you don't see Earth, but you want to take a picture because you know that there is a beautiful mountain scene or whatever. You will need a very long exposure, a very slow shutter speed of maybe even minutes to get all the light that is there and give your camera time to essentially collect it to compose an image. For example, this picture right here. I was standing on this beach and it was pitch black. I did not see anything with my eyes, but I just hoped for the best and kind of sort of shot into the dark, as you say. And after several minutes of exposure, I got this particular image right here, and I was very happy with it. But this would not have been something that I could have done if I would have popped my camera on auto mode, and especially not handheld or something like that. It just doesn't work as easy, right? Or you might also have seen on the good old interwebs these images where people take pictures of rivers, for instance, and these rivers are incredibly smooth. They look like clouds nearly. And this is also being done by making use of a very slow shutter speed. So how can you control the shutter speed? I mean, there are many options. In manual mode you can do it, but for now let's talk about the shutter priority mode on your camera. So if you have a look at the camera, you'll find there is a little dial somewhere on the top or at the back or on the side, wherever it might be, and this has certain letters on it. Mostly these letters are something like PSAM or SAM, these are the important ones at least. And if you find the S for Sam, or I think on a Nikon camera it might be TV, I'm not too sure. Let's stick with S or check the equivalent in your camera. If you find that, then you have found the shutter priority mode. And in this mode, you are taking full control of the exposure time or the shutter speed of your camera. So you set how long you want to take the picture for. On the screen, you will find something that looks more or less like this, which is just simply a measure of time, right? So it says, for example, 1, 2, 5, which is simply 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, which means 5 seconds the shutter will move away from the sensor. You have 5 seconds to take the picture, and then it's going to get back into place and block out the light. Similarly, if you see something like 1 dash and then 400, for example, that just means that the picture is going to be taken in 1/400th of a second. All right. So if you see the 1 dash something, it's just a fracture. It's a fraction of a second the picture is being taken for. And there you go. This is all you need to know to go ahead, pop your camera into the shutter priority mode and start playing around with it to see what this setting can do for you and to actually get a feel for what is a fast and what is a slow shutter speed and how you might use it in your own personal photography. As I mentioned before, if you want to have more detail, just head down to the article that is linked down in the description. Or of course, if you're seeing this video on the article, never mind my words. But other than that, have a look over there if you wanted to read more, see some more examples and maybe some more use cases of shutter speed and the shutter priority mode on that camera. And the last thing for you to do is just to go out, try it out, and then maybe show me what you did just by posting the photo or anything that you have essentially into the comments either on the website or of course on the good old YouTubes, wherever you feel like. Talking about YouTubes, if you did like the video, do not forget to hit the thumbs up button, and also, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe as it's going to help me out a lot. Other than that, happy shooting. I shall see you in the next video, which is going to talk about aperture. And until then, you have a good one. Bye!